This is Alexander Talty, environmental journalist and host of South Fork Sea Farmers. Today, our episode is Cooking with Shellfish, and we are really excited to have Chef Jason Weiner of Almond restaurants in Bridgehampton and Palm Beach, as well as L&W Market here with us in studio, and Chef Kerry Huffernan of Executive Chef of Crew restaurants, including Grand Banks at Pier 25 and Holy Water on Reed Street in New York City. Thank you, chefs, for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
For sure, this is gonna be fun.
And so, what are we cooking? I know we've got some scallops, some oysters. Can you talk us a little bit through your dishes?
So, I think if the East End of Long Island was a sovereign state, the Peconic Bay scallop may very well be our national shellfish. I think it's one of these things that's sort of emblematic of the East End of Long Island and why it's one of the great reasons to be out here and be a chef or just to be a kind of a civilian cook. I'm doing a couple of things with Peconics, which you were sort of good enough to procure for us today. They've been sort of up and down over the years. When I first got out here 20 some odd years, you couldn't find them at all. And then there are some great years. There we go. There are some great years of them, and now they're pricey, but they seem to be a pretty good year this year. Kerry could probably talk more about the sort of the biology of that, of why, and sort of the regulation stuff as well. But I'm doing two scallop things. I'm doing like a hot sort of brown butter move, which is in one pan, which anyone can do, and then a really simple kind of fun scallop crudo. So a raw thing and a cooked thing.
Fun. And I just want to quickly shout out Clam Man for these local bay scallops. Thank you, and I recommend getting them from there. So, and Chef Kerry, what are we excited to eat today?
So I'm doing some incredible bay scallops. I hope they came from Peconic Bay. I've had a hard time getting them this year from the Peconic Bay, but the crafty among us get out there and find them. But there have been big problems, as Jason was alluding to. There's a lot of different theories as to temperature, other species that are eating them. There's some kind of a boring parasite, perhaps, and no one really seems to have the definitive answer. But all I know is the past 3 years, it's been very difficult for me to find any. Now, I'm not the best scalloper, but other guys around seem to have the same challenges, and they seem to be much more plentiful further east. And that would maybe indicate water temperature, eelgrass presence, I'm not sure. But I still am able to grow oysters, which I have here. So these are oysters that I grow under my dock in Sag Harbor.
Those are, so I'm also a oyster gardener, and those are really beautiful. You have a lot of patience, and you're good at like molding them, I think. Like those are
well,
really
you could probably
beautiful
appreciate
ones.
the depth of that cup, and that's a lot of tumbling. As you
How
know.
old is that?
It's probably 4 years old.
Wow.
So I like them big. I think it's an interesting way to sort of eat an oyster. A lot of people who maybe don't really like oysters like the little tiny ones, and they pop them back with all that liquid and lots of cocktail sauce, and that's not really eating an oyster to me. I mean,
Kerry, do you want to talk about just the idea that all your East Coast oysters are actually the same species? It's just a matter of how you raise them and and what they're eating, right?
Right. So the impact of the oyster is environmental, and often temperature. It's what the oyster is able to sort of filter because they're filter feeders. So that and maybe some specific minerality that might exist in certain areas. Water temperature.
I know
Terroir.
Kim of Cornell calls it that.
Nice, I like that. I'm going to use that.
So back to the size of those oysters, what I like about the larger oyster is you can really taste everything that's going on. And I tend to sort of either just drink or pour off that initial liqueur because that is usually the last gulp of salt water that the animal took before being yanked out of the water. And it doesn't have a lot of its own character. Now, once you open it and get rid of that liquid, the oyster expels a little more of its own sort of juices, and those do have an oyster flavor. But I find that first gulp of salt water tends to dilute the whole experience. And what I tell people is you want it to be a dynamic experience. You want to chew the oyster and sort of see the way the different pieces of the anatomy impact the flavor. The gills are the briny bit, and then the belly is kind of that oyster funk, that deep oyster flavor. And then the adductor shell is very much like a bay scallop. It is the sweetness So if you remember to chew it and have a larger oyster, you can sort of get all those flavors and all those things going on in the same bite. And that to me is where it gets interesting.
And I have to just recommend your restaurant in New York on Pier 25, Grand Banks. I've had oysters there. It's very cool, and I feel like it's one of those places where you feel like it's old New York, where, you know, there were oyster folks on every corner.
Sure, oyster barges surrounded the whole island of Manhattan, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a nice kind of like callback to that era, I think. And also to what you're saying about how the oyster and the scallop are these kind of fundamental shellfish for our ecosystems out here.
Sure.
Well, the oyster certainly was emblematic of New York Harbor, you know, for 150 years ago. It was the preeminent shellfish, and it was exported, and there's lots of great stories about how important it was. But these days, what we're looking more towards is working with the Billion Oyster Project to use our discarded shells to create substrate and a place for young oysters to sort of take hold in New York Harbor. That's all for water, cleaning the water, basically. But it also provides habitat for small invertebrates. It also creates storm barriers to some extent, you know, so that events like Superstorm Sandy won't be quite so bad because you've got these sort of shoals that might protect it. So we're looking, you know, on a long game on the oysters in New York. So that's the oyster dish. We're going to poach it quickly with a little bit of cream, leeks, and thyme, and then put it back into the shell. Also a bit of spinach. And on top, we'll put a little breadcrumbs and some caviar. So it's our kind of nod to an Oyster Rockefeller, you know, in our own way.
Like a fresher take in a way.
Yes, exactly.
Nice.
Not baked with cheese and overcooked. And I find, you know, a lot of spinach in there, which sort of looks good. It actually overwhelms the flavor of the oyster. So you really need very little spinach if you want to taste both. The other dish I'm going to do is a quick saute of bay scallops. And I have some rutabaga puree, which I think is a totally underappreciated local vegetable.
It's the name, it just needs a new name.
Wax turnip doesn't do much better.
Some people call it turnip and some people call it rutabaga. But
What do you
they're
mean?
there's like this whole conflict in my family around Thanksgiving of rutabaga versus turnip. I mean, I know they're different vegetables.
They're different, but
but
they're definitely cousins, right?
They have some.
The white turnip is one thing. They call this a wax turnip because they harvest most of them in Canada and then they wax them to preserve them. So they're good for a long period of time.
I think turnips and rutabagas definitely need some PR help for sure.
They need the kale team.
They need a
kale
little
team.
Get on it.
Kale squad.
Kale squad.
But the rutabaga in particular, puree is very smooth. So it's this wonderful velvety texture. It's sweet. It's got that kind of interesting, you know, funk of something like a kale where you got that flavor. And then there's a little bit of apple cider syrup, which is surprisingly acidic and not sweet. Some butternut squash oil and a little chervil. And I was able to get all these things, except the lemon, out of the garden this morning.
I
So
love
it's still
that.
sort of growing, which is impressive.
Yeah, we're so lucky with that out here with our
Oh, yeah.
growing season. I know you take advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, speaking of leeks, I have Pike, Jim and Jennifer Pike on Sag Road, they close October 31st every year, but there's always that really nice row of leeks that are growing like two lines behind the stand. So I'm on like a U-pick program.
Nice.
Yeah, no, like 2 days ago I picked, and I keep track, and then in the spring I was like, I got 150 leeks this winter, charge me. Yeah, but they're right there coming right out of the ground.
Well,
Even
the amazing thing is
frost.
the leeks survive frost and snow.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And as does kale, you know,
Right.
apparently they turn some of the cellulose into sucrose to, you know, circulate, and which actually makes them better.
Sure.
I've heard, and
Yeah.
it makes something about like the water freezes and it bursts. It makes it less bitter because of the
Yeah,
cell
sounds right.
barrier.
Sure,
I don't
I'm
know.
going for it.
Tenderize?
Yeah.
Sure.
And speaking of rutabagas, another thing, if the best rutabagas out here are at Green Thumb Organic, and everyone drives by on 27. So if you want to get your mind changed about rutabagas, get their rutabagas.
Go
Yeah.
to the great. They're
Yeah,
really
yeah.
great.
Yep, they're awesome.
Should we start cooking?
Sure. So again, it's going to be the thing about crudos are you don't have to cook. That's why they're called crudos. So, and these scallops, you saw me kind of popping
Yeah,
my
I
mouth.
mean, you were eating them raw before
Right.
we started.
They're
to shoot,
delicious.
so-
I'm not even going to cut
Yeah.
these. Yeah, I'm not even.
And Kerry.
I'm not even going to cut these. I did pull off. You know what? Can you pull that other? There's a deli container in there. Right in front of you.
This one.
Yeah, bring that out. Just a real quick. So, they do come with a little, I mean, chefs call them the scallop foot, although it's not really a foot. It's just a little sort of muscle. It's a little bit tough, has great flavor. We save them and use them for stocks or whatever else, but you do want to take that off before you cook scallops. It's a little easier to take off with sea scallops, but it's a little bit more tender with bay scallops. You can probably get away with keeping it in, but usually we do take these off.
And that's the part, like the abductor, the foot that attaches.
That's I mean, the
What you
whole
were talking
abductor
about.
muscle is this, and this is
okay.
like Kerry said. You'll see a smaller version of this when Kerry.
Yeah, right on the oyster, right
goes
there.
right there.
That's the attacher.
yeah.
Okay.
So with scallops, this is generally what's harvested, and everything else is unfortunately discarded. Although scallop roe, as Kerry knows, is super delicious as well. But there is a little bit of grit in there that people don't like. But so from the scallop, that's where you end up yielding.
I even eat some of the eyes.
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So around the edge is this row of 30 eyes,
Right.
and then it's this sort of like ribbony. It's a bit firm. It's not for most tastes, but it's.
And you put it on at the end, kind
I
of?
just chew it. It's kind of.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really eating every part.
Well, if you ever shuck them, you know how much work it is. And
Right, for sure. Beautiful shell.
There-
Anyway, so just again, it's a crudo, so just it's a simple raw preparation. You could cut these. I'm not going to because I don't think you really need to. But and you can certainly do this with all the same thing you can do with sea scallops if you want those. I'd slice up. You can do with let's say fluke or maybe blackfish, whatever you have, but that's fresh. And in this case, a little bit of salt, but not a lot. Yeah, not a lot. There we go. A little bit of olive oil that you believe in, and then just a couple of fun. And again, you can, this is just a kind of a couple of ideas, but you can go in any direction. A little bit of pomegranates, unfortunately not local. They haven't figured out how to do that yet. Although I am getting some local figs and persimmons, which is very exciting. Yes.
I love persimmons.
Yeah.
Really? And they're so hard to transport. Like, I don't think
Yes.
you can really
They
Oh,
are.
the
get
ripe
them.
one?
Yeah.
Oh, forget it.
Forget it. A little bit of pumpkin seed. And now this is, so these are, I got some broccoli raw this morning from our friends at Quail Hill. So just figured may as well use a little bit of those flowers for a little bit of pepperiness, a little bit of color. And then I also have this thing, which is, we call the vernacular in the restaurant is crunchy crunch, which is basically anything crunchy. So we have some nixtamalized corn nuts, and we take dent corn from Quail Hill Farm and we nixtamalize it and make corn nuts out of that.
What does that mean, nixtamalize?
So that's when you take the dent corn and you brine it in a calcium chloride solution. It's how they make masa.
Okay.
It's how they make masa. Yeah. So that takes off the outer hull, and then it becomes more digestible and easier to cook. So it goes back to the Mayans and the Aztecs, how they process corn to make masa. They weren't. I mean, those peoples weren't. Corn was a grain. It wasn't really a vegetable like we eat it. It was more like a store grain, and so it allowed them to store it, but also it became more digestible and also captured the nutritional value. And it also, by happy accident, made something delicious to eat. So anyway, so it's corn nuts. And then we have some fried wheat berries in here, some sesame seeds, some za'atar spices, which is a bunch of kind of Middle Eastern things. What else do I have in there? Some nutritional yeast, why not? Anyway, so it's a little of that, just so you have the velvetiness of the scallop, and then set against a little crunch of the crunchy crunch, and then a little pop from the pomegranate, a little sweetness mirroring the sweetness of the scallop, and then the flowers, because why not? And that's kind of it. And it's something you could definitely do ahead of time. It's something you could do for 5 people, 10 people. It provides a little bit of kind of fireworks, a little interesting. That's it.
I
That
love
sounds
that.
great.
Right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Let's hold it up so we can see
And if you don't
the
have
colors.
If you don't have pomegranate, you could certainly use maybe pink grapefruit. If you don't have crunchy crunch, you can just get corn nuts from the gas station. I mean, you can do walnuts instead of pumpkin seeds. You can do any kind of flour or no flour. Maybe an herb, maybe not. But yeah.
So kind of 3 other elements.
Let's say
3 to 4,
you're just what you're trying to do is create a little bit of contrast, a little bit of juxtaposition, flavor and texture. But then also you want to mirror some of your flavors and textures. I find. Yeah.
Looks amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Should we get in there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we
Good.
should
Let's eat that
try.
readily. Whoop.
Oh.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm gonna nixtamalize everything I touch from now on.
You know, I remember, Kerry, I remember there's something that we did a dinner, a Hagron dinner, a few years ago, and you did something with coconut oil. It was a crudo, and the coconut oil seized up
Yeah.
right on the plate.
Yeah.
It was such a nice look. It was such an interesting kind of texture. It was really great. So it was like, because you know what coconut oil does? It's just, instead of like a slick on the plate, it was like a really nice. I really like that a lot.
I've since corrected that problem, but I
Oh, really?
appreciate
I
that.
thought
I
it was by
appreciate it.
design. I really thought it was by design, and I've ripped off that move a couple of times since. I'm not kidding.
I love that.
Yeah,
That's
it was
a cool-
great. Right.
That's really good. I love the pomegranate and then the nuttiness
Yeah.
with
Fun,
the
right?
scallop.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, so I'll put this over here for later, and I'll feed you people in the audience. Yeah. They just came for the food.
Freeloaders.
Yes, exactly. Let me take that out of your
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're going to go to this sort of Oyster Rockefeller interpretation, and again, it's very simple. If you can,
Can I help in any way?
I'm just gonna.
And I love that it's not buried in cream and all that, because I find it's such a good time of year for shellfish, and then to have something that's like so goopy, like I'd rather just eat mac and cheese. You know?
I'm a sucker. I like super refined, super delicious and thought out things, the kind of things that Kerry makes, but I also like totally disgusting old school things. I can go in any direction, really. I mean, I'm not gonna diss old school Oysters Rockefeller from the Oyster Bar. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna diss that.
That's fair. That is fair. I do think some of those dishes you're like, oh, people like it for a reason.
Right,
you know.
So we're just gonna stew our oysters and leeks very quickly in this cream. And we're gonna get that going real quick. And you wanna infuse it with a little bit of time. So you want this sort of, I think leeks are just one of the great gifts to culinary traditions all over. And I'm thrilled to know that Pike's is serving them all winter.
They're there. You pick.
So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add our oysters. And we're gonna get this up to a quick simmer. And we're going to sort of place them in the shells. And I said before, you don't want to put too much spinach in, because sort of the traditional Oyster Rockefeller has lots of spinach and it looks great, but I find that you can't taste the oyster anymore. And I worked really hard to get these to this stage,
Yeah.
and I still want to be able to taste them. I want to sort of understand, you know, the specific terroir. I think that each area has a very different flavor. Oysters from the west side of Robbins Island versus the ones from sort of the North Fork around Widow's Cove or Widow's Hole, or Montauk, whole different ballpark. You know, much brinier, much saltier, much more of that ocean flavor. I like the Back Bays. I like that sort of funk of
The bay.
shallow.
That
Yeah.
bay smell funk.
Yes.
Can you talk about, you know, that sort of aphorism that have oysters in months that end with the letter R? Where are you on that?
Well, that's interesting
Why is
because generally the months that have R in them are not May, June, July, and August.
Right.
Yeah.
So why
Which
are
is the
the
consumer.
right? So why are those? That's when most people end up having oysters. But why are those not the best months?
So they're either spawning or growing.
Got it.
That's the idea. And what happens is the oysters get very thin in the shell.
Mm-hmm.
They're working hard at something else.
Sure.
Either extending the size of the shell, which you combat with the tumbling. So you can even see here, we've got a little bit of that edge of the shell.
No, those are tumbled. You can tell.
You can see. So what you do is you tumble it, and then you force the growth sort of back into the cup.
Got it.
You want a cup, so you want a deep, fat oyster. I mean, yeah, look at that guy. It's
Yeah,
like.
wow. Mm-hmm.
But what the oyster growers have figured out is there's lots of ways to combat that. They can do triploids, which don't spawn.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a different variation of the oyster.
What's a triplet refers to the sex of the oyster or something?
Yes.
Or-
Like it's basically like they are neutered from birth.
Mm-hmm. Got
So
it.
regular oysters can switch between male or female at any time.
Right. got it.
And the triplets, I guess they don't have that ability, but like genetically from the very beginning, they will never do that.
Right. So you're gonna beat the spawning part, but you still have to worry about the growth part. So They harvest oysters from different depths of the water. They move the cages around so they can always have a supply. And it's always a race. We find in May, when we open, most of these areas don't have enough oysters because they've been in this winter hibernation in the Northeast, and they're waiting for the grow out.
I do think if you live on the East End though, or anywhere in New York, this is the best time of year for oysters.
I think that, I think the end of the season when they really got everything going and they haven't gone deep into hibernation you're exactly right. So the thing we're gonna do is we're gonna chiffonade, which is a fancy French term for very fine sort of julienne like that. Chiffon is a towel. This is shredded towels, if you will. And that's all the spinach that you really need in there. So we got the thyme infused. We're gonna sort of pull that out. The oysters are just about cooked. The spinach is wilting. I'm gonna give this a little taste. Get all that salt you have over here. And they are just about ready.
And do you guys have any tips? You know, I think this is the time of year a lot of people are doing like holiday hosting. Obviously, that's probably something you guys could all do in your sleep. Do you have any tips for people having parties or inviting people over? Like, what are ways that you stay organized in the kitchen?
I think trying not to do too much is important. It's easier to execute things when you have less things to execute.
Like less dishes rather
Less
than
dishes, less elements per dish. Just kind of focus on the quality of the ingredient and the execution instead of all the other stuff. And obviously doing as much as you can ahead of time is sort of, that's how we stay sane in our business, is figuring out what exactly can be done before showtime and doing that, like getting all your cut work out of the way.
Mise en place.
Mise en place, exactly. I mean, this crudo that I did, like I said, super simple, and it's five ingredients. You know, just try to don't go over 5 ingredients is probably a good tip.
So I've got the oysters in the shell, and you know, again, typically with an Oyster Rockefeller, you're gonna put a lot of breadcrumbs, you're gonna bake it and gratinate it. Here, we sort of reverse the process. Now, if you were doing this at home for guests, I would probably preheat these shells so it stays a little warmer. And on that rock salt, it's gonna sort of hold the heat.
Oh, okay. I never knew that there was like a reason why. I thought it just looked pretty.
And just a tiniest bit, I mean, like 1 drop of lemon per, just to really sort of echo the flavor. Little chives.
That looks delicious, dude.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I guess it's okay if we put caviar on?
Yeah. I'm not gonna argue.
All right.
Nice.
So there's lots of great caviar out there right now. This industry is sort of really grown. There's a lot of great producers. They're coming from all over the place, and it's nice that we have a high quality fresh caviar available you don't have to spend $200 an ounce or whatever. You can get something that's a lot more affordable. All right, that's it.
This looks beautiful.
That does look amazing. Wow. May I?
I'm gonna give you that one. It's probably
Thank you.
That might have a little extra.
Yeah,
Take
okay.
that. Try this
Oh,
back.
and the shells are a little hot even just from the oysters. Wow.
Oh man, that's good. Oysters perfectly cooked.
It's a big bite, but it's a good one.
Yeah, so good. Just a little tightened up from the heat, but still has all the juice and the structure.
Right.
So good.
Thank you.
Wow.
I like all the fresh veggies too.
You can taste the leeks. You can taste the thyme.
That's great.
You get a little spinach, but it's not overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so you have a version of this at your
That
restaurant?
exact dish on that same serving
So
platter.
nice.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
I highly recommend it. So.
Wow, so good.
Oh, thank you.
Should I do my hot thing?
Yeah, we can do that. Or do you guys want to try these kelp chips?
Give me the kelp chips.
Okay.
Alexander's brother,
Cousin Eli
cousin Eli. I love
works
cousin
for
Eli.
them, and it's cool. They manufacture everything in the U.S.
In the U.S.
I think they grow the kelp in Mexico, like Baja California.
Pacific?
Oh, they're really good.
Specific.
But Pacific.
Oh, Pacific. Yes.
I could see kind of chopping this up. This could go in the crunchy crunch.
This would be good crunchy crunch. I know, it's honestly, and they're like really healthy. I mean, they're chips, but they're not like, they're basically,
Is it all kelp? Only that's the only ingredient is kelp?
Mhm.
Wow.
And then they do So I guess they,
Hang on, did they nix them alive?
I don't think they mix them alive.
I think you're making fun of me now.
I think they don't mix them alive.
No, I love it.
But they do like a truffle one, and I think this one is vegan. Anyways,
Super good.
Well,
Big
kelp is the
recommend.
future. I've been trying to
That's
sell
what they're
that
saying.
idea to, all of our guests, and we use it in a couple of different dishes. We use kelp and dulse and a couple different things, but I find that the Atlantic kelp from Maine, it's still wild at this point, but they're working on a lot of farm-raised kelp, even
Yes.
here on the East End, I'm
Mhm.
sure you're aware. And it's the one thing that can actually metabolize nitrogen out of the water.
Right.
And that's our big issue here. So it lives over the winter, wants nitrogen, and it's super easy. It grows a foot a day in the right conditions. So it's pretty amazing. I know that in Maine they're using the lobstermen so they can use the same gear,
yeah.
and they have nothing to do over the much less to do over the winter, so they can repurpose their gear for kelp farming. And hopefully this is something that would have some impact on the high nitrogen levels and that whole catastrophic cycle that we have in our back bays.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting. And I think also, I know that Stony Brook has come up with this way that they can grow it in shallower waters now. So that's really great for out here because most of our more polluted waterways are all shallow. Whereas in Maine, they're growing it in these like really deep, beautiful kind of like open sea.
Right.
Is it hard for you to source where do you source seaweeds?
So right now it's mostly dried.
Okay.
There are some fresh guys, but it all comes over the winter when we're not open.
Right.
That seems to be like the big thing I'm noticing, like between the producers and then getting it to the people that want it. It seems like there's this gap still. I guess also it's just not advanced enough, right?
There's that
Like
lady in Maine who sells frozen fresh.
Right.
Atlantic Sea Farms.
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think they work with restaurants.
No, you have to buy it basically on a retail level.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense.
Right.
We
They
still
also do a
it.
nice kelp kimchi. They do a kelp kimchi. I think they call it a kelp chi.
Oh,
No, they
yes.
do not.
I think
They
make-
do. And they have like 3 flavors of it
Yeah,
too.
yeah, it's pretty good. I mean,
That's a lot coming from you, Jason. Your
my
your
kimchi is pretty good. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, should we make?
Yes, let's
okay.
do it.
So, okay. Hopefully, I won't burn the place down. But so this is, so one of the sort of staple and easy kind of old school French things is brown butter. Specifically, a caper lemon brown butter is one of those kind of one of those moves that I like to reach for because it's delicious and it's easy to do. You can do it at home, but it's a nice thing to do at a restaurant too. Can I make that oil?
Absolutely.
So a hot pan. Guess I got this scallop seasoned a little bit, and I feel like scallop. So I'm also gonna get. Can you see this up? Gonna get a little cauliflower in there as well. Cauliflower I got this morning from our friends at Balsam Farm, and these are some potatoes. I pre-cooked these things. Potatoes are from Marilee Foster, who of course anyone knows about local farms out here knows Marilee she's a legend, a multi-generational farming icon who they do potatoes. That's how they started, but now they also distill and grow all kinds of things. And she's a wonderful person, good friend of mine, and really one of my heroes.
And you guys have worked together for a while.
For a long time, yeah. It's a little hot. I was afraid of this. Let me just put some of that oil there. I gotta break.
Hey, you want to try this one?
Yeah. Let me just do. Okay,
Here.
Let me just do that there. Oh God.
Oh, I think this will be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but I'm afraid of. Let me just put the oil. We're gonna.
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Okay, thanks. Oh God. All right, I'm back. So
It's always
I
fun
did
in the
warn that I was
kitchen.
gonna burn the place down. So you do want a hot pan for sure. So I'll just wait for this pan to get kind of where I want it. Wait for the oil to shimmer a little bit. Thanks for bailing me out, Kerry. So we'll wait for the oil to get just a little bit of a shimmer, a little bit of a smoke on it. That way you'll get a nice kind of sear on the scallop. It's impossible to mess up these scallops. You can deep fry them, you can undercook them, you can overcook them, and they'll always be delicious. It's the miracle of these things, but hopefully I'm not going to mess it up. So one at a time. That way, if you try to dump them all, and goes really for anything that you're cooking hot in the pan, dump it in all at the same time. It may end up, and they'll often stick to each other, and then also often steam instead of sear like you want them to. So
That's a great tip. I feel like I do that sometimes.
You don't
and
want
I
to
never
overload
do.
the pan, and you want something like this. You want to kind of have, create a little bit of separation.
This is probably the single most important technique you can learn.
Right.
Cooking 101.
Okay, I'm really bad at frying things, and I think it's because of
Saute.
that.
Yes.
Saute, not fry.
Oh wow. We're really in the French.
Completely. And if you're doing something like this, or a piece of fish, you want to let it set. You don't want to toss it around too at the very beginning. You want to create the caramelization on the bottom. It creates a little bit of a structure, and it'll get caramelized, and you won't have stickage either. So you let it sit there for a minute. Then you see, because of the amount of sugar in these things naturally occurring, they kind of caramelize immediately.
That's beautiful.
You can overcook them, like I said, they'll still taste great, but you don't want to, obviously. So, and this is something you can certainly do with a sea scallop as well. You can just go a little longer on them. So I'll let them sit like that for a second, get another caramelization on the other side, and then they're going to be pretty much done. And the nice thing about this is a one-pot dish. I'm going to use that same pan to do the rest of it, which is, again, 4 or 5 ingredients. So that's kind of where we want it to be. I'll take these scallops and put them on the plate right here. I made this dish at home the other day with pasta. You could serve it like this, or you could toss it into a pasta. Maybe serve it with rice, whatever. It's it's sort of pretty straightforward. So now I'll take some butter, and I'm going to brown the butter in there, kind of at the same time as get a little color on my cauliflower and my potato. And brown butter, so you want to get to that kind of nutty kind of aroma to it. You don't want to go any further than that, because then it'll get bitter. It'll turn into black butter, which you don't want.
So once it starts smelling nutty, that means
nutty, exactly. And then And what we're going to do is, so we'll get it right to where we want to get it. Get a little color on the butter, get a little color on the vegetables, and then essentially stop the cooking. This is essentially a warm vinaigrette. You have the oil is the butter, and the lemon is the acid, and that's creating your balance. And then again, because it's classic, I'll throw a little caper in there, and a little parsley, maybe a little more caper. So that's your salt from the caper. Maybe a little more butter. And that's essentially it. Maybe a spoon.
Wow, that looks so delicious.
Maybe a little more salt. Maybe I'll throw this back in for a second to bring it all together. We're going to wipe this plate.
Maybe we'll eat this up. It looks amazing.
And Kerry will tell you another kind of classic move. And there are ways to refine this a little bit. You can add a little bit of stock at the end to round it out a little bit, to kind of re-emulsify it. But this is essentially it. So it's, again, basically 5 ingredients that you like, right? And it could be with cauliflower, it could be with rutabagas for sure. It could be with a lot of things. But I do find cauliflower, caper, scallops, they just happen to work well together.
And it's a very East End bounty
Totally,
dish. Like I feel like cauliflower and potatoes, that's kind of the old school thing out here.
Wow. So good.
Maybe a little acidic, but that's it, right?
I think you need that. I mean, that's what you want to cut it. It's otherwise it's a bit sweet and rich.
Right. The one thing about this is you can't. So it only takes a minute to do, but you want to serve it right away, because you'll end up coagulating the butter a little bit, and the combination of the lemon and the butter will kind of find its way to separate on you. So this is kind of thing you want to have everything ready. Maybe if you do it serving with spaghetti, you have the bowls of spaghetti ready to go, and just dump it right on top of 4 plates, or whatever you're doing it with. And like I said, it's certainly good on its own, but yeah, nice simple thing.
That's really delicious.
Fun, right? Yeah.
And what are other vegetables like this time of year that you think are really great coming from the fields?
Well, certainly squash. All kinds of squash are around. But then also broccoli. All the brassicas are around right now. You have broccoli rabe, you have broccolini, you have broccoli. The root veggies are great. I mean, besides turnips and rutabagas, the radishes are great. Cabbages are wonderful now. Yeah, for sure.
So underappreciated.
Oh man, for sure.
I know cabbage. I thought in the pandemic it would have like a comeback because you could have it there and like when people were only going to the grocery store every 2 weeks, like it's the one of the few veggies. But they also need the kelp team.
Yes, I think you're probably right.
Awesome.
So what is our next dish?
Okay, so we are going to do a similar application in terms of the sautéing. And again, that hot pan, very dry, just a little bit of canola oil. I'm going to grab a few of these scallops on this seasoning platter here. And yeah, that was a great demonstration. Thank you. Now I'm going to wait for mine to get hot, but not too hot. Let's see. And the idea of, what was the word you used, shimmering? You see the oil go from the viscosity, you can see it there, hopefully. Getting thinner and kind of, there's those almost legs like in a good glass of wine. And you want it to get it just to that smoke point. And I think we're not quite there yet. So we're going to use this opportunity to talk a little bit more about how wonderful these scallops are raw.
Well, what are the kinds of shellfish mistakes that you think home cooks often do?
Overcooking.
I was about to say.
Overcooking. I mean, everything. Oysters, clams, scallops, fish. People are afraid
Yes.
of like undercooking it. And you can always put it back in the pan. Most things will actually continue to cook after you take it out of the pan. So you get this carryover cooking, with things like white flesh fish or even salmon. And obviously salmon and steelhead and trout and things like that, they're fine to have a little medium rare. In fact, they're better. But that time that you let it rest out of the pan so that it sort of, protein is like a sponge. And when you heat it, it's going to shoot all the moisture out to the exterior. That's the first thing that's going to happen. That's what you see with those little, if the pan is not hot enough, if there's too much in the pan, it's going to overwhelm the pan and the ability of that oil to cleanly disperse the steam. And that's how you're going to get that, what Jason was talking about, lack of a saute. So hopefully I can do it as well as he did. Looks okay. It'd probably be a tiny bit hotter than that, but I don't know if you can see the little moisture coming out.
Oh yeah.
See that? So again, if you have a pan that's not hot enough, if you have a pan that's not heavy enough, if you have too much oil, if you have too many things in the pan, that moisture will not be able to go from out of the animal and into a steamed product immediately. That's what you want. So you get caught in that in-between stage.
And that makes it like chewy.
It makes it chewy. You're not sauteing anymore. You're kind of braising. It's a big mess. It's spattering. Yeah.
And investing in a couple of nice pans.
Yes.
No matter how good a cook you are, if you don't have a nice heavy bottom pan, I mean, a cast iron is so versatile.
Right.
But one of these, I mean, you can go to Home Goods right now and get a really nice all-clad pan for $65, $70.
And
then you have it
you
forever.
cannot kill that pan.
That's right.
Like your children will have that pan because there's nothing you can do to hurt it.
Right.
All right, so we're getting a little bit of sauteing going on here. We want a little more heat. In the meantime, we're going to sort of talk about how we take this lovely velvety rutabaga puree, also known as wax turnip.
But I think that must be where the rutabaga turnip thing comes from. This like wax turnip mistaken identity.
Right.
I would love to read a food history on that. I find those things really interesting, like food culture. How.
I wouldn't be surprised if a rutabaga is actually considered a kind of a turnip.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah, I'm sure it is. I met like the rutabaga king. There's a guy in Ontario who grows more rutabagas at some vegetable show. And I thought at one point that he and I were going to get together and change the world. We were going to enlighten them. It did not happen. I am still no richer for the matter, but there was a dream.
You had a rutabaga
Yes.
empire dream.
I like it.
I know you have done a lot of work with like lionfish as part of the eating the invasive.
Yes. 15 years ago, we were first sort of seeing the invasion, the lionfish issue with them coming in, escape from tanks and taking over the reefs in South Florida. But there's actually lionfish that come in here
Yes.
juvenile ones, but they still see them every once in a while coming
I
into
think
Shinnecock.
Yeah, they call them like tropical
Drifters.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. It
Well,
always
there's a
makes
number
me
of
think
things.
of someone at like a tiki bar, like this fish that like.
Yeah, so we work with a lot of invasives. You know, we try and make sure that we're doing the best to create, you know, the best invasive species that are overlooked. Like for example, dogfish. Dogfish have sort of moved in where cod and striped bass have left a void. We serve probably 400 to 500 pounds of dogfish in tacos at our restaurants every week.
Wow, and is it hard? Cause so whenever I go fishing, I seem to catch a lot of dogfish.
Yeah.
And I always throw them back.
No, the big ones.
But the big one. But how do you fillet? Is it a lot more work? Or
No,
is
it's
it
the same thing.
It's the same thing. Okay.
Same thing. They have, so it's a shark. It's all cartilage, no bones. I'm putting a little bit of brown butter in here just as I'm cooking it because I'm going a slightly different route. I'm gonna pick some thyme and put that in and let that sort of aromatize in the brown butter. Beurre noisette. So it's that smell of browning butter
Oh, wow, yeah.
and thyme in fish is kind of one of the things that we really spend a lot of our time trying to achieve. So we've got this little bit of brown butter, thyme. We're just gonna gently sprinkle these guys around. I've got this apple cider syrup, which sounds like it would be sweet, but is surprisingly acidic.
So what is that?
Just cider reduced. So you take your milk pail or whatever, and you just carefully bring it down.
That's it, nothing else?
That's it.
Nothing else.
Some toasted pumpkin seeds. This pumpkin seed-esque oil.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
A little chives, and the chervil is just, as I'm sure you know, Jason, it just takes over
Totally.
the garden. Like I have like a mat of chervil. Like anytime you need, just come help yourself because I can't stop it. I think that's it. I think I'm forgetting. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. There we go. Touch of lemon. Hey, what up?
So nice.
Yeah, that really looks beautiful.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks, bud.
You run the gamut of forks here.
Yeah.
You go.
Oh no.
There's like, I use the word sulfuriness to, in a good way, the rutabaga
So good.
that sort of reinforces that fall
nice.
flavor.
Yeah, it's delicious.
It's nice because it's fall, but it's not like I feel like sometimes things are like too like pumpkin spice latte, you
Oh,
know.
And I like the room temp rutabaga.
But this is like fall,
Oh,
but
really?
not.
I'm not kidding.
It's supposed to be hot, but you know, we were busy.
We were talking about how it's for TV, whatever, we'll pretend, but I like, honestly, it's like, I kind of like it that way.
Talk about
That's
easy
really
to
delicious.
do at home. Keep your room temperature, rutabaga puree at room temperature at all times.
Exactly.
And I also think doing like the putting it down and then putting it on top it easily makes it look fancier.
Yes.
Yes.
Like a little oil on the side.
And the spoon pull, I mean, Kerry made it look so easy, but it is pretty easy. It's a nice way to, it's a nice way to impress your
Zhuzh
people.
up your home, yeah.
That's right.
Do you have any other tips for like cooking with shellfish at this time of year besides don't overcook?
Well, we start with buying fresh,
Yes.
and then buy local and sustainable,
Sure.
and look for transparency in the chain, because there's so much that is sort of getting around that, you know, in terms of like I believe that New York's number 1 and 2 fisheries are squid and tilefish, and most people don't realize that.
Don't know that. That's
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, tilefish you see, but the squid, you know, it comes in, it's too cheap to sort of make a lot of, people don't put a lot of effort into it. And I think like fresh squid can be awesome. Like if you really, really good quality and clean it yourself real quick and sear it the same way.
Yeah.
And if you create demand for these species, then the fishermen will go and catch these species.
Right.
It's a virtuous cycle. And the other thing, and Kerry kind of touched upon this, creating a relationship with your fishmonger And that leads to transparency, and he'll tell you, somebody you can actually trust, who you can have a conversation with, and it's not that hard. I mean, just go to seafood shop once a week for the next 3 months, and you'll actually make connection with that guy on the other, or Stewart's, any of these places. I mean, they will tell you where the fish is coming from and what it's about. They know the story.
I think most consumers, one thing when we talk about lack of transparency, like for some people, they want to eat low mercury fish. Some people want to eat stuff that's super local. Some people, only want things that are line caught. And so I think having that conversation, then, I think part of it is there are bad actors that are trying to, sell us stuff that isn't as fresh or as good and is bad for the ecosystem. But also some of it is just, everyone wants different things. We all
True.
aren't looking for the same fish.
Sure.
And there's also sort of old habits that are, I wouldn't call it misinformation, but like that all farm fish is bad. Well, that's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of modern aquaculture is really the future. You look at these recirculated aquaculture systems, the RAS that they have at Hudson Valley, that we use their steelhead, and it is a zero ocean impact, high quality steelhead, but it may as well be salmon. I mean, they raise it in a way that has the fat content of a salmon. So yes, farm raised salmon from some places, bad news. RAS salmon and steelhead, the future in terms of like where we can go to create great sources of. And the other thing is they can create the protein as close as possible to the population source.
Sure.
So a lot of what we go through is transportation, right? You have fish coming from Iceland, Norway, south, whatever, all even from Boston, that has a big carbon footprint in terms of refrigeration and transportation. So hopefully we can all get to this place where we're eating locally and like honoring what's happening over the winter. Like tuna will be around for a little while, but then it'll be gone for another 5-6 months for sort of our local opportunities. That's when you focus on the squid and you look more towards the sailfish and all these other species that are so great.
And do you, because both of you guys,
Alewife is coming.
Yeah.
This is the time for alewife.
and you do serve that at,
Yeah, well, so I have a December tradition. We get in about 30 or 40 pounds of alewife. We fillet it, we pickle it, and then we have it in our pantry, a move that we make all the way through for the next 3 or 4 months. But the better part is, we're just as good. We save all the heads and guts, and we put that up for fish sauce. So
Ooh.
I think the date on my fish sauce is something like December 19th. That was the last year that I did it. So in a year
that's
or
so great.
thereabouts, I'll pull out that fish sauce. I'll strain it. It's ready. And we get a new batch up that'll be ready next December, and then we pickle about 4 or 5 months of herring that we'll put on. It's a really beautiful, clean, bright flavor, right? And it's great for the spring. It's great to wake up your palate in the winter. Yeah, it's a really nice cycle we have.
I love on Instagram, you guys are really good about sharing what you're preserving when, and I
Yeah.
think it's so fun because I think a lot of people don't realize how you can eat seasonally and preserve things in the moment and then
Completely,
work with
totally.
it. And both of you guys are known for, cooking seasonally, working with local products. Is it sometimes hard, like when you're talking about introducing your customers to things they don't necessarily think of? Like, how do you approach that with your kitchens?
It is our responsibility. We're not here to knock people over the head with things or to lecture people, but it is our responsibility as chefs, or part of our responsibility is to open people's eyes a little bit. No one wants to be hectored, or like I said, or talked down to, or lectured, or just told how to eat. But
It's that engagement, and hopefully, obviously it's going to come with the servers. So you get the servers jazzed about whatever it is by letting them taste it and sort of getting them on board, and then that's an entree for them to begin this conversation that will hopefully lead to a great interaction. Not only in them sort of learning more about what you do, but in feeling like, well, this is a place where I feel like I belong. There's like this dynamic relationship that can begin with something as simple as, what is a steelhead, or why do you serve dogfish?
And I think some people may not want to continue that conversation and they want whatever they came in for, but for some people that can be really illuminating.
well, who doesn't love a taco? So you
That's
put the
true.
dogfish in a taco.
You can put anything in a
That's
taco.
exactly right?
Let's put all of these together so we can see what they look like.
Oh no.
Are these all too hot? Oh,
No, you're good. You could, yeah.
I think they can all work.
Yeah, that's fine.
This one's not hot. And then, oh wow, that's beautiful. And then we have some white wine if you guys are interested.
I'm going back to work,
going
but
back to work.
I'll pretend it's the 90s.
I have a 3-hour drive back to the city.
I'll just have a little sip or something.
Oh, we can do a splash.
I'll just do a little splash.
Okay. Oh, you're replating for
I'm
us?
gonna replay.
Oh, wow.
Smart. Maybe I'll bump this up too. That's a good idea.
This is
I'm
the
stealing two of your
deluxe.
scallops.
That works. Oh, beautiful.
There's-
It's lovely to see them all together. And I think also obviously these are super fresh ingredients and you guys prepped beforehand, but none of this was like that.
No, it's not rocket scientists. I mean, that's the thing. That's our dirty little secret. Chefs aren't very smart. We don't have to be very smart. It's just if you start with the right ingredients, you can kind of get away with a lot.
Yeah, and respect them and
Exactly.
And how do you, I really want to know about your tumbling process, Kerry.
my tumbling process is
Yeah.
me on the dock, kind of doing that.
So you
Really?
don't have the machine or anything?
I do not.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Manually, one by one.
So you
Yeah.
shake
I
them.
shake.
You're a shaker.
I shake,
Okay.
and then I go, check them
How
again.
many do you have? Like, what do you?
I have like a couple of hundred. It's not that big a deal.
Right, got you.
Now,
you
cleaning,
have
the
them-
cleaning is the big deal, like keeping
Yeah.
the
Sure.
all the different algae and things, which is really cool to see. All the different. I had this algae in October, and if you hold up the cage, it looked like you had put oak and maple and all these different leaves. Like the colors were orange and red and just like green. It was crazy.
Yeah, I think it's such a beautiful way to like interact with the waters out here. I always try whenever I have visitors. I'm like, do you guys want to come and like see my oysters? It's like some really fun, and they're
Where are your oysters?
they were in Tiana Bay.
Okay.
I've had them on a dock in Cold Spring, but then now I'm back in the Southampton program. So.
Chaim, just a quick something.
Yes,
Yes.
cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you
Thanks.
guys
Thank
so
you.
much for
Thanks.
cooking for us today. So here we have the scallops crudo.
Yeah, scallop crudo with pomegranate and pumpkin seed and crunchy crunch and some brassica flowers.
And then for your crudo or
So
your
sorry. So
first-
we have the sort of the modern oyster Rockefeller, oyster caviar, oyster with leeks, thyme, spinach, and some beautiful caviar.
And then the cauliflower brown butter with scallops, capers, and potatoes.
And then the aforementioned wax turnip with cider coulis and seared scallops and a little bit of pumpkin seed oil.
Beautiful. And we only have a couple minutes left, but do you guys want to share like one of your favorite holiday food memories?
Holiday. Well, I mean,
You can be as a chef or as
Yeah.
an experience.
I'm the latke guy. Like
Okay.
I can talk a blue streak about my relationship with latkes and what it means to my relationship with my late grandma, and those memories were really something great. I mean, I'd walk into her apartment in Riverdale, and before even saying hello, she's like, "You're good. You're here. Good. Grab the other side of that towel." And then we just start twisting. Like she had this long like tablecloth, and we just twist and twist and twist. That was the most important thing: squeezing out the water from the potato, and just the smell of onions and her grating the potatoes all by hand for a pretty big family, and kind of
Wow.
her joking that like if there's not a little piece of the knuckle in the locker, they're not doing it right. She's just a wonderful woman, and just my memories of that. And now we end up doing about 2,500 latkes every Hanukkah season at the market,
Wow.
which is it actually lasts the perfect amount of days because that first 7 days I'm really psyched to make latkes again. By that 8th day I'm like I'm done.
Like love you, grandma.
Exactly.
But
I have great memories of growing up in Connecticut, with sort of traditional, roast beef and even roast tomatoes and horseradish cream. But more recently, I love being out here, and I love to be able to go clamming, and I love to pull up the oysters, and I love to sort of see what's left in the garden. So those are kind of my modern holiday traditions is like exploring the bounty of the East End and really looking carefully when you think it's all over. People like September, Labor Day, it's done. And I'm like, It's just beginning. There's so
It's
much.
actually, it's a reminder of the fact that while the East End of Long Island has become a place for folks from elsewhere to come and honk their horns for a couple of months, it actually the heart of it is a farming and fishing settlement, and that's what it continues to be.
Right.
Definitely. And I think September through like February is such great eating times out.
sure.
And like the farms, I mean, just everything that's
Mhm.
coming out is
Definitely,
amazing.
yeah.
So
I mean, if you have the opportunity to go hunting, there's still so much game out there. You know, the ducks that come and visit us, and it's just
I
it's
got
just
a
amazing.
duck and venison ragu up right now in the restaurant cooking right now. Yeah.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's great. And are people open to eating like meats like venison and
Yeah,
stuff?
if I tell them, I mean. No, people are down with it. People are, yeah. Actually, venison actually sells pretty well. People seem to get it. Yeah.
I guess out here deer is like very popular
Yeah.
to hunt.
Yeah. I hit one the other day.
Oh gosh.
I got a whole new front end out of the deal.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I mean, everyone was fine. I mean, the deer, I don't know, they're not very smart. Turkeys, they look both ways before they cross. Deer,
Turkey are very smart.
yeah, super smart.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I've heard that the farm turkeys that they can drown themselves though.
No,
No.
But
Wild
the
turkeys.
wild
Talking about the
turkeys
wild
are much
turkeys.
smarter
Yeah,
than
yeah.
farmed ones.
Yeah.
Right? No. Art Ludlow is keeping the farm turkeys dumb, so they don't try to.
Yeah, exactly.
They
That's
don't.
next year's paycheck.
That's right, exactly.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming and showing us how to cook with shellfish. This is all very beautiful, so many amazing colors, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jerry.
Thank you.
Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks. Nice